buzz of people working. So what I'm going to do now is really sort of debrief in a fairly chaotic way. You know, it's not as if we're kind of looking for neat solutions to specific problems and looking at how people have had a go at tackling them and stuff like that. We're just kind of accumulating the types of issues that people have chosen to work on and the types of strategies they've employed in their struggle to overcome these issues. So when you're hooting out and shouting out a problem, it's perhaps your own or perhaps it's your partner's, we don't really know, and it doesn't really matter because we're just accumulating them, if that's okay. So could somebody start us off with a particular issue, a bullet point, and then we just try and get some of the strategies that people have been trying to use to work with those things.
Feeling worthless.
Thank you. And strategies?
Working very hard to not feel worthless.
Yeah.
So working very hard.
In a career, you know, really driven and trying to gain approval from peers. And,
Can I perhaps summarise that as driven in career? Yeah?
Certainly.
Now, would you think of that as a kind of a positive or a negative strategy? I mean, did it work?
No.
Okay, it didn't work. And does it feel like something positive or negative in terms of a choice of strategy?
Well, it's just Adeline's just saying that she thinks it maybe worked for a bit.
Yeah, yeah. So it had
a sell-by date.
Okay, it had a temporary effectiveness. And I'm guessing it probably was quite helpful in the world of career.
Absolutely, yeah. And gaining some kind of success and acknowledgement from others,
So perhaps it certainly has some constructive elements to it. It didn't kind of work in terms of the problem, but we could perhaps call it constructive, driven in career. It's got a shadow side, hasn't it, which we could fill in here as well, which probably is about burnout, exhaustion and stuff like that, but let's leave it at that. Yeah. Okay.
Worrying about other people's opinions of me.
Yeah. Let's try and bullet point that. Worrying about opinions of others, fine. Thanks. And some strategies.
CBT, self-help books.
Yeah, okay, yeah, right, okay, so what's that? Positive thinking in a way then, is it?
Yeah, trying to change thinking.
Changing thinking. Is that did it work?
To an extent,
to an extent. Because in doing this work, and in a way this is the preliminary stuff of the ACT model in a way. What we're, in some ways, sometimes it can be, it can feel a little challenging, but bottom line, your client has brought a problem to you. It's still a problem. They may have had, done lots of work. They may have been to therapy before, and they may say one of the strategies I tried is therapy, and you say, well, did it work? Well, maybe it did for a little while, but the fact that they're back here suggests that it hasn't completely sorted it out.
I suppose, to qualify it, no, it didn't cure it.
No.
And it's a constant, takes constant effort. It's a constant tiring type thing to be aware of.
Yeah.
So no, it's not. It didn't work enough, but it did help.
Yeah. So once again, probably relatively constructive and probably quite generalisable to other things as well. Some of the techniques. Yeah. So I'll call it positive thinking. We know what it means. Positive thinking, therapy. Yeah. Okay. We're a bit short. Negatives, negative strategies.
I can start you on that one.
Thank you! Nice positive attitude to negative strategy, I like that.
I'll do my best. Anxiety about finances.
Angst refinances, yeah.
My strategy for 20 years has been to avoid it.
Avoid
Avoid anything to do with finances.
avoid money almost, like
If I could. Yeah. But avoid dealing with it, you know.
Avoid dealing with it.
Yeah.
So it does sound like it probably led to greater difficulties.
Yeah, there's been elements where it's been quite constructive and positive, but probably not healthy.
Right.
So yeah.
So in a way, the shadow side of its deep negativity is that occasionally it was helpful.
Yeah.
Avoiding dealing with it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep them coming. Let's just get the board full of it.
Taking on too much.
Okay. Now, is that a strategy or is it a problem?
Oh, yes, it's a problem.
It's a problem.
Sorry, are we still
Yeah.
on strategy?
No,
Right,
that's
it's
fine.
a problem.
Yeah. Taking on too much.
Yes.
Yeah. And how have you struggled with that?
Well, I've tried to get smarter at taking on too much.
Ah.
Yeah, that's really been hopeless.
Yeah.
That's a really destructive one, actually.
It's subtle, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's smarter. It's almost like getting better at taking
Getting
on too
better.
much.
Yes.
Getting better at taking on too much.
Getting better
Yeah.
at taking on too much.
Yeah. So is it a positive strategy or a negative strategy?
It becomes negative.
It becomes negative. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to sort of say I can't control myself. That is so American. People are upset. I mean, if you look at the reading list, everyone, you can get better at getting, and they would use the word smart. And why is it they have the highest level of antidepressant, intake in the world? So I think it's very interesting to bring that up. And I fear, having come back to England, I see that happening here. I'm very worried. This whole positive thinking,
Yeah.
I find very, very troubling, because it wasn't here 10 years ago when I left.
I know what you mean. There's a sort of an implication in there somehow that you're a bit of a dummy for not having realised that you should be thinking more positively anyhow.
And in my field with cancer,
Mm.
if you don't keep a positive attitude, your cancer will come back. And that is so insidious. I've spent so long having to re-educate and
Yeah.
patients and families, because they really believe, particularly in the US, that their cancer will return because of their attitude. That is so pernicious. So
Yeah.
I won't say anything else now.
Okay, thanks.
Just-
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that's the positive thinking thing up here, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Well, I'm sure there's lots more, but just take a few more anyhow.
Not liking.
Okay, not liking myself. And just strategies with
It's
that.
on the destructive side, around editing, exaggerating, and then incongruous.
All right, yeah, okay. Yeah, so, yeah, I'll just put it as you say. Yeah. Not congruent. What way is it? In what way does that end up being destructive?
It's incongruence, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not the person I'm presenting.
Yeah, got you. So
I
the the very struggle, the effort, and of course this is the message, really, isn't it? But the very struggle to present yourself as something that you thought as more likable is then something you turn around and criticise yourself for being a fake, for being fraudulent.
Yeah.
So the very effort of the struggle actually ups the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
And of course, in a way, this is the essential message that this whole business is, is seeking to bring out. Not in a sort of look what you're doing way, but a chance to sort of say to your client, well, what do you learn from this in a way? Kind of going through it and sort of bit by bit, did it help? No, in fact it seemed to make it worse in some respects. And just slowly teasing out the essential message that it's actually the struggle itself that's that's become the issue in some ways. I mean, you'd never have needed to feel fraudulent if this strategy hadn't been adopted in the first place, and yet then that added to the thing. Yeah.
That's right. I just ask, because one of my fears in doing that with people who are depressed
Yeah.
is that they're going to beat themselves up even more and not have been able to figure it out, or trying lots of things that hasn't worked. And so I'm a bit hesitant in kind of that kind of message of you've been trying but you haven't sorted it out yet. Especially when they're already coming with a lot of humiliation.
Yeah. I think
add to that sort of sense of hopelessness almost, can't
Yeah.
it?
I think what's important there is to actually normalise this as such a human thing to do. I mean, let's just try moving on to doing something like that. I wonder if there's a water thingy. You didn't bring a board, Robert, did you, Henry?
No, I didn't.
No?
There usually is one here, isn't there?
Pardon?
Yeah, I just use a... That would do it, I think.
Try this?
Yeah, you're all right with that, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Evidence of workshop activity all over. We got a bit of paper. Oh,
Maybe...
kind of.
Did you... I hope you used the right kind of pen.
Here we are. I have got the right sort of pen.
You have...
Yeah.
Yeah, wet rag would be better, wouldn't it?
This dishcloth has been promoted to the role of rag. Yeah. Yeah, so let's just divide things. Forget the problem. So let's just divide the board up into external experience and internal experience. And for a moment or two, let's just take a look at external experience. So, well, how do we make the distinction between internal experience and external experience? Let's just sort of get a few, just make sure we're talking about the same thing here. Give me an example of some internal experiences. Thanks, yeah. Thoughts, sensations. What was the other one?
Memories,
Yeah, memories, yeah.
images,
Yeah, lovely.
Feelings.
Yeah.
Emotions.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great stuff. And in external experiences.
seeing,
Seeing. Yeah, so objects out there. Yeah, seeing objects. Events. In a way, it is something about, what can be sensed, what can be touched with the five senses out there, isn't it? That in a way is the, the external world, the internal world. And let's divide this up into both of them here. Let's think of a few problems in the external world.
Earthquakes.
That's a great one. I feel challenged by that
Tell.
one. Okay. Yeah.
Responses from other people, reactions from others.
Yeah. Okay. Unpredictability of others. Yeah. Oh, judge other people's reactions then. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe unpredictability on its own.
Just the uncertainty of life. Yeah. 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 How would it be if there was no lights on in here? There's no windows.
Darkness.
Dark. Be a problem. Yeah. Be a problem. And what would a solution be? Put the lights on. Yeah. It's just, in a way, it's just, looking for things as simple as that. Dark. Too dark. Okay. And so just looking at this one, So here we've got props, and here we've got solutions. If it's dark, put lights on. Let's have a look at these. Earthquake. That's why I said it would be a bit of a challenge. But what do we do with the problem of earthquake?
Send out disaster relief teams to
Yeah.
dig people out and help them.
Yeah, after the event, so disaster relief, yeah.
Build better
People
buildings.
attempt to plan, don't they? So they try and kind of not build on kind of plate tectonics, or they
Yeah.
build buildings with big basement.
Yeah, and in a way that's also, looking at how do we answer the problem of unpredictability as well, isn't it? It's kind of similar thing, it's about trying to plan and control ahead and so on. Planning and control.
Attempting to predict.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, what do all these things as problems kind of have in common in terms of, human experience? It's a bit of an open question. I might have to sort of help with that. But what is it about them? It's almost like what makes them problems in terms of human experience. Hmm?
A powerlessness.
Yes. Yeah.
Lack of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they affect our environment, they affect everything we do in the environment. When we go out of here today, we need to be careful of traffic, we need to be careful of the snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Those things that affect our lives. And they are the areas that we can manipulate, isn't that right?
Yeah, got you. Well, in a way, I'll perhaps sort of try and I'll offer the word I'm looking for really, but they're things we don't want. We've got to watch out for something we don't want to fall over. We've got to watch out for traffic because we don't want to get run over. All that. Basically, problems are things we don't want. So let's call them don't wants.
Do you mean like a lack of preparedness?
Well, yes,
That
in
runs
this
through all of them.
instance, predictability-wise, yeah, in that instance, yeah, it often is. We don't want to feel out of control, do we? Bottom line. But problems basically, kind of don't wants, and here we've got solutions. What's the relationship of solutions to don't wants?
Threat
Managing it, yeah. Threat management, yeah.
They get rid of problems.
Get rid, yeah. Get rid. I mean, get rid
control.
or fix. Control, yeah. Okay, so far this has been the external world. And this is kind of human experience, and it's something that kind of, just happens almost as you walk into a darkened room. You don't need to sort of run it through a whole heap of mental processing. Your kind of index finger is already searching for the light switch, and you kind of know that it's going to be near the door, don't you? Because designers have already dealt with unpredictability when it comes to putting light switches in, and they've worked out that it's a good idea to put the switch near to the door. So everything about human ingenuity in the external world is about finding solutions to fix things that we don't want. That's something it is. Okay, so let's move over to the internal world all of a sudden. So, what kind of problems are we talking about in the internal world?
Worries.
Yeah, and it's going to be basically it's obviously going to be to do with these various things. So worries, and that's sort of thoughts, isn't it? Or it could be images as well, couldn't it? Kind of it's difficult experiences in a kind of cognitive or the imaginal world, which we could call worries. Yeah. Yeah. Huh?
Pain.
Pain, yeah, that's difficult sensations. Yeah. Or it could be emotional pain, couldn't it, as well, yeah.
Something about all the don't wants.
Again, it's all done once, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Whatever the internal experience.
Whatever the internal experience. It's anything that's defined as something we don't want, it becomes a problem, doesn't it? Great, okay, now then. So, again, it's don't wants. Now, what's solutions then? solutions here?
Medications.
Well,
Sorry, I'm
yes.
being facetious.
Well, yes, in a way, but
Yeah.
they've got something about, suppressing
Yeah.
the don't want, aren't they? So let's put it up there. But in a way, it's a bit of a crossover because it's almost bringing the external world into it. In terms of internal world, what are our internal solutions available to us?
Denying.
Denial, perhaps, yeah?
Avoidance.
Pardon?
Avoidance.
Avoidance?
Sharing.
Hmm?
Sharing.
Sharing, yeah, sharing. Yeah.
Planning.
Yeah, well, they're all kind of cognitive. That's got a bit of an external thing about it because it's actually, engaging with the outside world, but the intention to share and so on and so forth. But as soon as it's about struggling, any of these, and the vast majority are in some ways, because almost, by definition, they're engaged in ridding ourselves of something we don't want. In each of these, there's a reminder of what we don't want. The very engagement in the struggle is kind of exaggerating the don't wantness of the problem. A bit like you illustrated with your profoundly internal issue, clearly. So, what in the external world and what almost like automatic, it is almost automatic in human behaviour to just go and look for the light switch, and there's masses of things masses of problems in the external world that we just deal with automatically before they even get promoted internally to the status of a problem. The solution just comes. It's automatic. We attempt to fix it. We attempt to control it, and often there's lots of things at our disposal to make that very easy to do. And that same learning, that same kind of automatic pilot learning, frequently and in most cases in the human condition, is kind of automatically applied to internal experiences. And it does take, it takes a bit of debriefing and a bit of understanding to realise that often the very solution becomes part of the don't wantedness. It reminds us of the don't wantedness. Does that make sense? And is it a sort of a fairly clear way of trying to put that over?
You haven't sort of got a column there for the kind of having your feelings or
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was thinking when I was sharing.
Yes.
Which I do think is something we mostly do seek to do. People seek to be able to. They know they need to breathe.
Yeah.
Just as they know they need to love. And,
Yeah.
they know they need cuddles.
Yeah.
Unless something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And contact, and the sort of the space that allows you to have your feelings and work through them really.
Yes, it does. Well, in a way, what you're moving on to is really what the next phase would be in the ACT treatment model, is to look at an alternative to the control agenda. And you mentioned grieving, which is a good example, because most of us know, there seems to be fairly well demarcated stages in grieving. The first one often having elements of denial associated with it. This can't have happened. How could they? And anger, and in a way, extra distress with the struggle of trying to get rid of the unwanted event. Don't want my loss, and it's not fair, and it shouldn't happen to me. And at that stage, we're still in the internal struggle, aren't we? But then moving along, and it may be that actually, the first bit of counselling or therapy with grieving is still while people are in a denial stage, but hopefully there's a chance then for it, there's a certain amount of normalising going on, when we talk about these stages. But the next stage is acceptance. It's moving on into an acceptance of the loss. I may not want for this to have happened, but given that it has happened, I'm willing to recognise that it's happened. I'm not denying it any longer. I'm willing to experience my loss now instead of resist it. So actually grieving is a great, kind of quite a great example, because it's such a universal human experience, and if a client comes and it isn't about grieving, it would be quite a good example. So at this stage, we're looking to move toward, and gently move, and it's not something that's going to be kind of articulated very clearly. Because we're trying to get the learning from the client's experience, not from our mountain top, or halfway up the mountain, right where they are on their mountain, and just asking them to check around, look at feel your own experience. Have these things helped? What do we learn from this? And we're moving to a place which we call creative hopelessness. An important kind of stage in this work is moving towards creative hopelessness. And it's an interesting phrase, isn't it, that? Because it's kind of got a paradoxical feel about it. But what we're talking about is not the hopelessness of your situation, client, but the hopelessness of the continuing struggle, and the continuing exhortations to think positively even better. You're just not doing it well enough. You haven't read enough self-help manuals yet. Hey, listen, we got a great one. Only $88.
Yes.
If you get it quick. Somebody got a solution for this?
Hammer?
Yeah. You don't want it, get rid of it. And you can do that in the external world. But if it was going on in here, what would I do? Can't do that. So, yeah. Where's my rubber? Lots of, just looking for sort of useful ways and means of getting this idea across at this point. But a little formula that I like to use is this one. Because if your client is, what they call it, mathematics phobe, or I don't know, somebody who hates maths, it might not work so well, but it's a very simple equation. Suffering equals pain plus resistance. And it just speaks volumes, really. Particularly if you can just talk about pain being a consequence of being a conscious human being. That the inevitability of pain, and kind of going back to the roots of this work in the early teachings of Theravadan Buddhism, Message of the Buddha, and dukkha. The inevitability of experiencing unsatisfactoriness in the human condition, whether it be the pain of birth, pain of loss throughout life, or the pain of death, pain of illness. The pain is a given. And there's lots of other human experiences that are a given as well, but without a doubt, pain is a given. But then pointing out that if we were, and again the grief thing is a good one, but pointing out that resistance, well, okay, when you resist something that is inevitable, what is the result? What is the result upon you? What happens when you resist something that is inevitable?
Existential angst.
Well, there's certainly an angst, yeah.
I was thinking just of exhaustion.
Yeah, absolutely, get exhausted.
Conflict.
It's conflict, you're in conflict.
I always think you just make wrong decisions because you're not actually in touch with the right information.
You're off the ball, aren't you, really? You're focused, you're preoccupied with your... So there's a preoccupation and a sort of remoteness from the current moment in a way, isn't there? Preoccupied. And for me, I think there's a powerlessness. Here I am struggling against the inevitable. I'm going to keep being reminded of how powerless I am in this situation. Now, what are all these things?
Attempts to control.
They're attempts to control, aren't they? Of course they are. Yeah, all of them. Control attempts, yeah. And what's the experience, the common experience of all these?
Suffering.
Yeah, suffering. So, whoa, there we go. Suffering equals pain plus resistance. So there's pain and there's suffering. You know, which of these two can we as choosing human beings have any effect upon?
Resistance.
The resistance. There are certain choices we can make about which will actually reduce this, maybe take it down to zero, or at least sort of thoroughly reduce it. What about here? Nothing. It's a given. We can't really. And so again, you're putting over the same message that in the internal world, in the world of internal experience, the struggling with it is actually part of the experience of suffering itself. And so that's kind of moving to this place of creative hopelessness. Now, a metaphor that's nearly always brought out at this point is the metaphor of the falling in a hole. Anybody familiar with it? Quite a few people, really. How you tell it, I don't know. I think just find your own way of feeling comfortable with it. It isn't an immediately obvious sort of story with it, really, but it's often talked about as, say life is like, the task of life is walking across a field, and you find yourself on one side of the field, and you can just see over the other side, you can see where the hedge is, you've got a sense of what direction you're supposed to go, and you're told your task is to walk over to the other side. And just as you're sort of getting your bearings, somebody puts a paper bag over your head, and you realise you're not going to be able to see, but you've still got a sense of where you've got to go. And just before you set off, you're told that there are deep holes in the field, and so you better watch your step. You feel a bit anxious about it, but you're reassured when somebody gives you a rucksack, and you're told there's some tools in the rucksack, and if you come into troubles, just check out what tools you've got available. And off you go, and you start feeling suddenly there's a sudden disorientation, and as you try and walk from there on, you get nowhere. Nothing's happening. You don't seem to be making any progress. It occurs to you you must have fallen into one of those holes. It's obviously not your fault. There's holes around you. You were blindfolded anyway, so it's no blame. But there you are. You are stuck in a hole. You might feel a bit like blaming yourself, but there you are. You're in a hole. I'm not blaming you. So you go into your rucksack, and the only thing that's there is a shovel. You can tell by the way it feels. And out it comes, so you start putting a bit of effort into it, and you dig this way, and then you try again, and you don't seem to be getting anywhere, so you dig another way, you dig in the other direction, still nothing seems to happen. You try throwing the soil over this shoulder, that shoulder, you try piling it up to see if you can climb up there. Who was thinking of that as a solution? And there is a tendency already with this metaphor to go for the fixing it mode, but that's not what the metaphor's looking to do eventually. It's to get to this creative hopelessness place where you ask the client, well, what do you do in this situation? What's the first thing to do that's going to help your situation? And it's best if they can come to it rather than you offer it, but what are we hoping they'd come to?
Let go of the spade.
Let go of the spade, yeah. Why, then your hands will be free. We don't know what for, but they'll be free. Maybe somebody will reach down. Again, looking for solutions, but obviously you don't get out of a hole by tunneling. And that's the bit, that's the message around creative hopelessness. So there's a feeling then, perhaps both in the client and you as facilitator, well, I better say what's next then. I better give something of this hopefulness, but actually, some of this creativity. But in a way, we're just staying with the hopelessness, letting it stay creative, as it were, so that the client's willing and open to receive suggestions for other things. And as we know through the grief model, it's a kind of, letting go of the struggle, letting go of the denial in that instance, and then a willingness to experience the difficulty, to experience the pain. Because the opposite, what is the opposite of resistance really? It's, huh?
Giving up.
Or letting go.
Acceptance.
Yeah, now, yeah, okay, so that's interesting. You say, so we've had words like acceptance and willingness is perhaps my word as well. You know, I'm willing to experience it. I may not want it, but I'm willing. But giving up, let's just take a quick look at that. How do you feel about the phrase giving up?
A negative phrase, isn't it? Or it can be seen as
Yeah.
a negative phrase.
It can, can't it?
But
Yeah.
actually, I suppose in this context, it's giving up the resistance. Isn't it?
That's it. It's giving up the struggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
But giving up just on its own has got a feel. It's almost got a feeling of resignation. Put up with it.
That's what I was meaning in that sense. That might be something that somebody might
Yeah.
do to just like think, oh well, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Then. Yeah. I won't bother with therapy anymore. It's obviously my lot is to feel deeply depressed. It's going to come and go. That's what happens with people with depression. You keep getting episodes of it, and that's that. Yeah, but it's giving up the struggle rather than giving up the. Well, really, in the long run, with regard to ACT, it's about giving up what you value. It's not about giving up what you value. It's the opposite, really. But in a way, we haven't got to that. So now, unless there's any questions, yeah.
It's quite a difficult, I think it would be quite a difficult position for the therapist to be in, because you're still there, you're still seen as being all powerful with all the answers, and still seen as a fixer. So the client is still coming because they're struggling, and although ACT isn't about that, you still know more about ACT than they do. You've still got sort of a solution to offer. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do, yeah. What I will say on that, because we perhaps can't go too far into that now, but there are some good resources on the CD that we're giving out. There's one or two ACT therapists' attempts to condense what they call their informed consent approaches, their way of dealing with just this issue. Which is a sort of a stalling thing. It has a certain hopefulness in it, but it's a stalling thing. Because, I mean, largely we're hoping that this learning that the clients are going to get through their engagement with us is an experiential learning. It's learning through their own experience. It isn't didactic. It isn't about what we tell them. It's about what they know. You know, from what we're able to facilitate and what we're able to kind of reflect back about what they tell us about their experience. You know, we then say, well, what is your experience telling you? So, you know, as the traditional sort of expectation when they come to us is, what is your therapist telling you, isn't it, really? And what is your therapist going to tell you about this hopelessness that we've just introduced, you know? But it's got to kind of somehow or another at this point got to go back into sort of, you know, what does your experience tell you?
But that in itself is a profound challenge to CBT. I'm just struggling because I actually just signed on for a CBT course, which I really don't want to do, but I'm feeling I have to because it seems to be the way things are going. I think you bring up a very important point. It's the clinical psychologist, the therapist is the specialist, and you spend all your money on your training, and you need to come up with the stuff, particularly when the NHS is expecting up to 6 to 8 sessions. So it's the real world pressure. You haven't got time to talk about their experience. Their experience hasn't done them any good. You've got to be the experts. And I have real struggles with that.
Yes. And I think that's what I feel about ACT being so much more of a humanistic approach.
Right.
Although it's, you know, it's still at a young phase where it's establishing its credentials as a rigorously evidence-based approach based in the behavioural tradition, Skinnerian behavioural tradition. Okay, well that's one bit of languaging, but on the other hand, I think it's a profoundly humanistic approach, which is very much about honouring the client's experience, and is actually, recruiting the client's struggle as evidence for why more of that likewise struggle is going to be, hopeless. But there's something creative in that. But let's just have a, I think that's probably a good little link for me to move on to another act metaphor, which again is very experiential. Could you dig out my ludicrously pink box?
Sure.
Thank you very much. My beautiful assistant, thank you. So anybody seen these? It's one between two. So these are the Chinese finger traps. And, yeah.